like a child that's lost his way. Then so soon
You are listening to the Lance J Radio Show on Advent Sports Network.
keeps guiding me, and the
This Monday on the Lance J Radio Show, we have an unbelievable guest, the best guest that we have ever had on Advent Sports Network. The beautiful young lady joining me this Monday has about 40 years in Christian education as a mentor, a principal, a teacher. She has taught some of you that are listening to the program right now at stints at Baltimore Junior Academy, Worthington Adventist Academy, Columbus Adventist Academy, Oakwood Adventist Academy, and now she is currently serving South Central Conference as the Superintendent of Education, serving the states of Tennessee, Mississippi, the Panhandle of Florida, Kentucky, and the state of Alabama. Our guest today is married to James Lewis Jr., who served in Allegheny West as the conference president for 8 years, an additional 12 years as the conference treasurer. So she has spent her whole life and dedicated it to servicing young people and servicing the SDA Church. Most importantly, she is the mother of the host of the Lance J Radio Show. So I would like to welcome my mom, Sharon Lewis, to Advent Sports Network. Mom, it's great to have you on the show. It's great to have you as part of the ticket, as I like to call my team. How's it going?
Oh, I'm glad to be on the show. I've enjoyed several segments of Advent Sports Network, and think it's a great concept. Looking forward to seeing where the show is going to move in the future and how it's going to impact young adults and teenagers in the Seventh-day Adventist Church and in the broader community.
You never pushed me to really be overly involved in sports. I always wanted to be involved in sports. If you could put your parent hat on, how do you juxtapose, because you're both a teacher, a mentor, a principal, a superintendent, and a parent who has sent a young person who's now a middle-aged person all the way through the Adventist system from kindergarten all the way through college. How do you juxtapose when you're working with the principals and the other leaders throughout the conference and at the union level? How do you juxtapose sports with academics? Where is the line drawn? What achievements does a young person that wants to play sports in among the schools that you have worked for, directly or indirectly, what do they have to do to be able to play on the team, and how much of a precedent does sports take when it comes to academics?
Well, there should be a requirement, an academic component, and a requirement of academic performance in order to participate in school team sports. But that's only for school team sports where one is representing the school. I think that students playing sports is a good thing. It's important for them. And I don't like to see that curtailed, but I do think that in the competitive realm, there needs to be some guidelines, and there should be some standards, both academic and behavioral, for students that are competing as student athletes and in a manner representing their school. So most schools, and my schools, have had GPA requirements 2.0, 2.5, that kind of thing. Behavioral requirements, you can't play, go out and represent the school if you were on, say, social probation or if you're on academic probation, any of those kinds of things. That, as I said, I don't think that precludes students from being involved in sports, but in terms of participating in sports where there's competition, where they go out and represent their school, I think there does need to be a standard of performance, both academic and behavioral.
What are some of the challenges that you've had, especially I kind of go back. So for those listening, I went to Pine Forest, as many of you know, because I'm always talking about Pine Forest in the show. The only time in my life where I've ever not wanted to speak to my mother or acknowledge her was when she became principal of Oakwood Adventist Academy, who was our hated rival. But I digress. Nevertheless, when you were at Oakwood Academy serving as the principal there, what are some of the challenges, if you'd like to discuss for my audience, what are some of the challenges you had in motivating and keeping the cohesion of the sports programs together, which are very strong? You have a good athletic director. You have good coaches. Coach Manning has been on this show a couple of times. What were some of the pitfalls that you ran into where you have students that are very focused on the athletic side, but they're not doing what they need to do in the classroom or behaviorally?
Well, I do have to, because I'm a Seventh-day Adventist educator, I do have to be even-handed, and I have to look at some of the pitfalls and perils of competitive sports. You've been going to basketball games, both church league games and academic ones with various schools, and you know that competition sometimes leads to some very, very intense moments. We've seen competition sometimes will involve our students in behavior that is not Christ-like. It is not representative of what we want from our school. For example, if you have a visiting school, you know the whole business of stomping and shouting and booing when someone is at the line, is that really what we want to be representing our school? Is that the character that we want our young people to be displaying and developing? So those are problematic. There's no doubt about it. Sad to say, but let's just say it at lunchtime, at lunch recess, when kids are playing some sport. That is probably the most opportune time where people get into physical altercation around the basketball hoop at lunchtime. Because Ellen White, she does say plainly that in comes in pride and the desire to dominate and the superiority. And those things do come with competitive sports, unfortunately. And it seems as though competitive sports bring that out. And so that's why I believe we have to be so, so very careful to help our students develop a real understanding of what athletics is really all about. And it's not just about winning. It's about being your best, doing your best, being your best. And if you win, that's a good thing. But lifelong learning how to lose is important, too. That's a life skill. No one is going to win at everything all the time. And so when students are involved in sports where they have parents and they have coaches and teachers and school administrators who help them develop a healthy view of athletics and competition, then sports can be a good thing. But I've had challenges with those students and even challenges with parents, because it's very interesting. Parents want their students to do well academically, but they also want their students to play in sports. And I've been in the very difficult position of where I've had to not take students, allow students to participate in tour trips. You can imagine in Adventist schools, you don't have that many of those. And so when you're looking to have a trip to, say, Andrews University for the AU Classic, and you can't go because GPA is 1.95 or 2.1, or it didn't make the cut, or you've had too many behavioral issues. You'd be amazed, the parents that will come and, oh, it's not fair, and you're hurting my child's self-esteem. Very interesting and quite interesting.
Sports definitely, as I've gotten older, I've realized when you're younger, you think that the ability to play and represent your school is a right. As you get older and see other generations coming up, you do realize that it is indeed a privilege. It's not something that you're guaranteed. You have to meet a certain criteria to wear the Oakwood Academy jersey or the Pine Forge jersey or the FH Jenkins jersey. We're going to cut to a quick break. We will be back on the Lance J Radio Show. I am talking with my beautiful, wonderful, and amazing mother. She's talking about her experience in the Adventist Christian education system and how sports have been used as a part of the mentorship and growth and development of young people. We'll be back right after these messages.
In 49 BC, Julius Caesar led an army over the Rubicon River from Gaul into northern Italy. By doing so, he crossed the point of no return and declaration of war against the Roman Empire. Centuries later, you are listening to Jeremy Winston reach his point of no return only on Advent Sports, The Rubicon.
I mean, he's a one-dimensional fighter. He's a stand-up fighter. That's it, bottom line. I mean, he doesn't have anything else. You know, I'm more well-rounded. I have power. I can put people to sleep on their feet. I can take you down and beat a hole in your face, and I can submit you. What else can he do?
And Connor, what would your response to that be?
He will do absolutely none of those things. Not one little bit of a thing.
You are listening to the Lance J Radio Show on Advent Sports Network.
Here, when I give my student athletes the school's code of athletic behavior, and we have a code for student athletes and a code for coaches, and then we have for students, for those who are visiting the games and parents. We hand those things out at the beginning of the year when we have our first team meetings. And I share this story with my students in terms of what it really means to be an athlete. And most people are familiar with the story of Jesse Owens, who was an Olympic hero in the 1936 Olympics there in Germany. Jesse Owens, we know, was a track and field athlete, and he had already won the 100 meters, but he was also in the long jump. And the next day after he had won his first final in 100 meters, beat Ralph Metcalf, the next day he was in the long jump competition, and he was having real problems. He fouled on his first two jumps. The officials, one of the jumps was a practice, but didn't matter. The officials counted it as an attempt, and he only had one jump left. He was jumping against a German long jumper, toughest competition, by the name of Lutz Long, Luzlong. And Long came up to Owens and introduced himself. Of course, he was the typical German that Hitler favored, with the blue eyes and the blonde hair, the whole master race thing. Yeah, right, exactly. And he had been watching Jesse Owens. Now, mind you, these guys are competing against each other in the Olympics in front of Hitler in Germany, 1936. He noticed that Jesse Owens was making a mistake in his launch in the first two jumps. And Long went up to Jesse Owens and offered a suggestion. He said, make your mark several inches before the takeoff board and jump from there. Jesse Owens took the advice, qualified on his last jump, and later in the afternoon, Jesse Owens won the long jump. Now, why do I tell my kids this story? When people ask Lutz Long, why would you give advice to a competitor? Lutz Long said, I wanted to compete against Jesse Owens at his best, and I wanted to do my best. That's what I want to see my kids do. And so it's not always about winning, but it's about doing your best, being your best at that time. And so every year I use this story with the students because this is what I want to see my students show. I often ask them, if Jesus were playing basketball with you, how do you think Jesus would play with you? Would he beat you down if he could? Or would he show you mistakes maybe and show you how you could be a better player? What is this all about? We want to help one another to be our very best. And so I use that story with the students every year, letting them know this is the framework in which I, as the principal, want to see athletics done in the school.
That's a really good story. I'm surprised that you never told me that when I was a kid competing in various leagues, baseball, basketball, etc.
I didn't learn the story. I didn't learn it until I was a principal later on.
That would have been very inspirational. If I was younger, I'd be ready to go out and run through a wall. As we close, I wanted to give you a chance, Mom. It's been great having you on the show. We'll have to have you back on to talk about some other topics and maybe even get you on the Rubicon with Jeremy Winston, talking more about some of the fundamental aspects of education, such as Common Core and No Child Left Behind, and some of the deleterious activities that the United States government has done to the education system. I wanted you to sound off as we close. You sent me through Adventist education virtually my whole life. There was one year I didn't go to an Adventist school. I went to another Christian school because there wasn't a place to go in the city that we lived in at the time. It was before I was mature enough to go to Pine Forge. What is so wonderful about the SDA education system, and why do you advocate that? Most of the people that listen to my show actually have children that are either just entering school or kind of in the first 3 or 4 grades of school. What would you say to my listeners as far as the decisions they should make sending someone through the Adventist school versus public school? We know that in Tennessee, where the headquarters of South Central Conference is, you have F.H. Jenkins, which Carlin Alford has been on my show several times, doing a lot of work. Him and Dr. Wood, they're doing a lot of work getting F.H. Jenkins back to prominence. You have Alcee out in Memphis, which has shrunk as far as its size. What would you say to young people to implore them to send their kids through the SDA system?
All right. Children spend half of their waking hours at school, Monday through Friday. Why would a parent want to place children in an institution that did not support the beliefs, the values, the lifestyle that they are teaching in their home? I always find it amazing. Parents will say to me, well, it doesn't matter if I send them to public school. They're going to go to church. They're going to go to Sabbath school. They're going to go to Pathfinders. How many hours a week is that? Whereas they are in school 50% of their waking hour. The teachers spend more time, oftentimes, of a child's waking hours with the child than a parent does. Because when the parent picks them up from school, maybe they've been in aftercare, parent is not getting them till 5 o'clock, maybe 6. There's errands to be run, then homework to get done, and then get that kid into bed at a reasonable hour, and they're sleeping 8 hours, hopefully. And you're giving your child to somebody else to mold your child's thinking and shape your child's values. If I'm going to do that with my child, then I want to be giving them to someone and sending them to some place that at least is going to have the same values, the same lifestyle, the same beliefs as I have in my home. I don't want my child to have to compete with what he or she learns at home against what they learn at school. To me, it's as simple as that.
The Lance J Radio Show is taped at Advent Sports Network Studios, located in beautiful Emerald City of Seattle, Washington.